Yeah, great. So I thought we'd just take quite a laid-back approach this session, a bit more of a Q&A style. So feel free to butt in at any time and ask a question in whatever detail you like. So I thought I just might start by telling you how I got into the industry, and then open up to you guys from there. So I have a performing arts background. I mentioned earlier that I grew up dancing and playing musical instruments, and sort of fell into film and television sort of by default. I got into a course at uni, which I really, thinking back now, didn't really know what it was. It was media arts production at UTS, but what a godsend. I loved it from day one. I also did a law major while I was there, so I spent 5 years at uni. In my final year, I took an exchange program to Canada, and again, totally by fluke, I have to say, I landed smack bang in Ryerson University in Canada, which is a phenomenal university for film studies and actually dance film, which I got to make my one and only dance film, but it was truly the culmination of both my worlds coming together at that moment. But look, the experience in Canada meant that I actually finished university, and I had produced 2 short films while I was over there. And I came back to the Australian marketplace with 2, I think, quite high standard for where I was in terms of age and experience, films. And off the back of that, I got a 10-week, internship on a low-budget Australian feature film. And it was unpaid at the time. I did 10 weeks. I started as production assistant, ended as production manager. And that was my contribution to my career, 10 weeks without pay. Off the back of that job, I got employed as a producer with a brand new company at the time called Jungle Boys then, and I was their second employee. So I landed in this very run and gun style type production company, I guess you'd call it. They were very much the emerging, competitor type person in the advertising game at that stage. HD had sort of, the swing in television commercials from film to HD was just starting to happen, and they were right at the edge of that, pushing forward, looking for new ways of doing things, cheaper budgets, all that sort of stuff. And so I landed in that environment at producing, I would have to say, at a very young and inexperienced point, but the company was sort of matched my experience, I guess, at that stage. And so I've been in a position where I've been able to grow with the company, and I've been at the now Jungle. I became partner, they changed the name, thank you, for 11 years. So a lot of luck in there, but at the same time, I've pretty much produced content since I started at uni. So alongside the television commercials in those early days, we were making short films. I think I've produced, and I still occasionally produce a music video on the side if the band's good enough or if I know someone. And I think that dedication to craft is what's helped me get to, where I am today. And by no means am I so far along that I would call myself any sort of expert in any field. But I think the continuous process of production and learning to duck and weave and look for opportunities and, exploit anything that's put in front of you is my recommendation of how to sort of truly get a foothold in the industry. It was called Men's Group. Now, actually, this is a good thing. So, Men's Group was a very unusual film to work on. It was largely unscripted. It was very much a method acting approach. And for my first film, I was just blown away by the process. They were very strict. We couldn't talk to the actors as crew. I've not worked on a production like that since, but it was very much the actors arrived on set. They were in character, and they basically the whole film is shot as if it was in a men's group. So they come in and they do these group therapy sessions, and day after day the actors are arriving in character and actually going through these kind of incredible emotional journeys, and we sort of had to stay out of the way basically. But they shot that continuously with 4 cameras, I think. And it's funny because No Activity, which is a comedy show that I go on to produce 10 years later, is actually very similar in its style. So we, again, largely unscripted, and we basically set up the cameras and got out of the way of the actors, and that was the thing that made that show so special. But interestingly, 10 years before, I'd worked on a film that had a very similar way of making. I'll go into the methodology in the next session because I'll talk about that in quite some detail. But the thing with No Activities, we pitched it with the production methodology. So as well as pitching the creative idea, we went in and we said to Stan, we're going to be your first commission. We know money's tight. We know your business model. You're an emerging platform in the Australian market. We know that you're going to get $10 off subscribers when they join. You're starting from the ground. Here's a show that is so amazing. It's got the best cast and you're going to make it for really cheap. That was the pitch. And so we just banked on them going, oh, okay, yep, we don't have much money. And, So look, the one thing that we did absolutely promise from day one, though, is that would be a very high production value show. So you look at the calibre of the cast. We shot it at 4K. I think the cinematography is beautiful and the lighting direction is beautiful. It's all shot at night. There's a lot of things in there that give it a really high-end feel, but actually the way that we made it, and like you said, shot in 9 days and using specific constraints, like you notice the characters don't move around, they're always in the one location. So that was part of the DNA of the show. So it's interesting. We try not to call it a low budget show because actually it doesn't do the show justice in many ways. But it was a show that was shot quickly with that intention in mind. So you're right. You work on commercials. You're working for a client, for a brand, to a 30-second format or whatever it is. But you get exposure to crew, technology, equipment, techniques that I think are unparalleled because basically you could shoot 20 different genre things back to back, across 12 months. And you don't really get that opportunity in television. A show's a show or a film's a film and you're going down this angle. Whereas the amount of different things you get to try is really worthwhile. It's still an artistic endeavour, even though you're delivering a commercial product. It's just not your story. You're not making it to make stories, but you're making it to learn the craft. In my case, anyway. We did this commercial once where the idea was that you started downstairs and the kids were, the parents were in the kitchen making breakfast, and they yell up to the kids, and the kids are upstairs, fighting or doing something wrong. And so we start down on the parents, and the camera goes up, and it goes through the floor and up into the room and up to the kids. And so we had to work out how we were going to have one continuous shot where a camera gets to a point, and practically we couldn't cut a hole in the floor because we're in a house. But how do we then make the camera go from there through the floor, seeing all the electrical cords and installation and whatever, and pop up the other side and through the carpet and into the kids' room. So we had to build this rig, and we had to work with construction teams and grip teams, and it was actually quite a complicated shot. And it's just, that's one of those things I don't know if we would do on a normal TV show. And it was great to take the time to really work out the technicalities of how to achieve that type of shot. So I think commercials are a great training ground.
And to have the budget too.
Yeah, you've got lots of money as well. That's right. You're spending, say, $500,000 on 30 seconds. Yeah, surprisingly there aren't many organisations. Occasionally commercial companies do a couple of long form projects to test the water. I know Revolver, for example, has been doing a brand funded feature arm that they got enterprise funding for, but actually very few companies are doing both and are seen to be kind of championing both. So with film and TV, it is like this. You're in production and then you're in development for quite a long time sometimes, and what the commercial side of the business has is regular work. So between the two arms of the company, we share resources. We share an office, we share administrative staff, we share accounting staff. We are two different creative teams. That's because we're working in two different spaces, but we do share the overheads and able to benefit from that financially. And I think it is a very good business model in my perspective. And yeah, so like I think about it on an individual case, and it's like the person that makes wedding videos and does photography and writes in the paper in a column on Saturdays and also makes a feature. It's the same sort of thing. I think especially you guys being regional, you need to be looking to I guess learn and continue to practice your craft, but maybe think a little outside the box in terms of where you're directing those skills. Wedding videos are they're cinematic. You've got a client, So yeah, you know what though? There's a great American duo. I should remember their name, Rhett and Ted or something. Does anyone know them? No. No, close. But they specialised in making local commercials, and they had this thing where they made them for $5,000 or something like that, and they targeted like local businesses. And there's some of the best ads I've seen on TV. There's the one where the fox hat. Anyone seen it? Yeah. But yeah, you actually have a look at their work, and it's actually brilliant because they've tried to really use very limited resources and have a highly creative idea in behind there. So maybe you can go around town and try and pitch local commercials. Yep, so the Van Burens directed some of that show, but not all of it. We had 10 directors. And actually it was our commercial directors that directed a lot of that show. So that was one of those productions that actually pulled in creatives from the commercial side of the business. It was a great opportunity for us because we came from that commercial background, and we had writers and also a lot of friends that were writers and advertising creatives that were writers. So we actually pooled all the resources of everyone that we sort of knew. And I think we had 34 writers on the show, 10 directors, 2 producers. So it was quite a hodgepodge of creativity. It was an ABC commission. Yeah, it actually started as a web series that we self-funded. And it had, I think, 6 short sketches where we launched them online, and then it got commissioned from that online execution. So we pulled it offline, and then those sketches got, I think 4 of the original 6 made the show. So yeah, we had three head writers. 2 of them, Trent and Phil, who are my business partners, and Chris Taylor of The Chaser was the third. And we actually took submissions for that show. So I think we had up to 500 submissions or something. We really opened it up, and people wrote in, and we had to read a lot of material, and we sort of shortlisted it down to our top 100, and we ended up shooting 50. So yeah, the head writers didn't write everything by any means, but of the top 50, they would have worked with those writers to support them. But I think a sketch show is quite different because you can have just those kind of flash in the pan ideas. It doesn't have to sustain an overarching narrative, or there's no character development. So it was an opportunity. I actually think it's a really good model, and we only did 1 season of that show, but I think it's a really good industry model because I think we could continue to do that and bring up new writers and new directors. I don't think we went into that whether this is a money-making project. We got, I think on that show, we got 50% finance and 50% services from the ABC, so it wasn't a full budget of cash. So we only had limited cash to spend, and then otherwise we had to use ABC resources, which they were great, but we got to access their costume and makeup department and all that sort of stuff. So no, it wasn't a cash cow by any means. But look, I think it was a good creative process, and like I said, I had a really good time working with so many people. Very hard to do, but rewarding, I think. So I worked with the Hipster Boys from their web series Bondi Hipsters through to Soulmates, and that happened to coincide with me doing my master's degree. So I actually wrote a thesis on this, so I've got quite a bit to say on it. But I was very much into the numbers, so we were looking, because their online numbers are so good, we were trying to work out a way of optimizing that. And so I created quite a detailed financial model around those numbers. In PR world, if a PR company comes along and they say to a company, you off the back of our PR story, you got this 1,000 eyeballs and this many clicks and this one, and this is worth, and they give a number. And I was really intrigued, you know, if a PR company can come in and tell a client that they've achieved this value of number, surely we can be talking in that same way to networks and financiers. So we took all our numbers, put it into a model, used the same CPI as what these PR companies use for Facebook, YouTube, you know, News Limited, whatever, and created a model that had a financial value. And we went in and really pushed that as a theory, and it was really successful. We funded for season 1, then we used the numbers again for season 2, and we got a 60% uplift in budget between season 1 and 2 off the back of this financial modelling. So yeah, whenever I talk to anyone that's got any sort of YouTube roots, I really recommend that you look at your numbers, you know who your audience is, you know, you can go through the analytics, have a good look at that, really understand what it is you're talking about, and then go in and pitch. You are the king or queen of that, you know, entity. You know the most about it. It's your product. Pitch those details to the network along with the creative idea, because you're ultimately saying, here's the idea, here's the audience, and this is what it's worth, and I'll take that amount of money, thanks. You know, and if it's good and it stacks up, that, you know, you're in with a much better chance, I think, than here's my one pager. Yeah, and we track all of that. Like when I go in and speak to Screen Australia, I say, you know, let's look at the Bondi Hipsters entity. Alone on the Bondi Hipsters platform, it's got this, this and this, and then Bondi Hipsters had the spin-off into Soulmates, and then we look at all the Soulmates platforms, this and this. Then separately to that, they've done this Old Spice commercial, and then they did this commercial for her, and this was worth this, and then they talked on ABC radio, and this was worth this. And so we actually put all those things into numerical values, and it stacks up, you know, it does stack up, and I don't think we actually do that enough as producers. Yeah, for sure. Yep. On media that we own, platforms that we own, and also, you know, like Pedestrian TV pick up a lot of their content. We have a, you know, relationship with them, and you know, you count all of those and file every press clipping that you've got, and, you know, use that as part of your business case study. People are expecting to see proof of concept these days, and you know, the actual technology is so cheap that there really isn't, I don't think, an excuse not to be able to pick up a camera and go and shoot something, even if it's your iPhone. For No Activity, we shot a pilot for that. I think we spent $10,000 on it. And that's a company pilot, you know, it's a company investing that. I think as an individual, you can shoot scenes or test bits and pieces. And yeah, I don't think the expectation is you need to invest a lot of money or anything like that, but I think you need to show that you're out there, you know, trying to connect to audiences and seeing if your idea has legs. We didn't run the No Activity pilot for feedback because we sold it, you know, pretty quickly thereafter. But it did very much inform whether we could make the show in the style that we were going to. So we had to test, could we actually shoot 21 minutes of content in a day? It sounded good on paper, but could we actually do it? And yeah, we could. So yeah, it was very important to establishing, even to ourselves, that it was possible. I actually think the producing skills are quite a bit different in the two spaces, because again, for commercials, you're sort of responding to a brief. But one thing you do learn to do working for clients is that, and this is a skill that I've definitely pulled along with me, it's negotiating with different key players. And in some instances in the commercial space, you may not always agree with what the client or the agency are trying to do to the thing. So you actually have to become quite diplomatic in managing that creative ecosystem. So that skill, then you then take this over into the other world, and you find you're actually quite equipped to be managing with the Screen Australias, the Screen New South Wales, the networks, you know, because actually it's a heck of a lot easier than in the commercial space, to be frank. So it's that being able to massage the players. But the other thing with the commercial, I guess it's only 30 seconds, and there tends to be something that's the key value in that thing, whether it's the celebrity talent or the massive stunt or the whatever, and actually working out in a longer context what the key production value elements are is really quite tricky sometimes, in a comedy in particular. You know, what is the joke? Like, and it's not always the same thing. Sometimes it's a prop gag, sometimes it's a visual location gag, sometimes it's a the casting is really important. If you haven't got that particular character in that role, the whole thing falls over. But just being able to, I guess, assess and pinpoint what the production value element is, and almost, if your budgets are tight, you can let everything around it fall away, so long as that thing, and we're talking earlier, Vincent was saying, the scene that he showed from The Hunter, that for him was the essence of that film. In a way, it's almost the same type of idea, because what is the key creative heart at the thing you're trying to do, and then you can actually peel everything else away. And so long as you've spent your money on that thing, then and I think I really learnt that from television commercial producing, kind of working out what the focal point is.